Hello everyone and welcome to another video with me, 320 Sim Pilot. I'm a real-world airline pilot, and in today's video I'm going to take you through the A330 in Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024 from AnyBuilds. This is a default aeroplane that everyone has included. If you have Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024, you'll have access to this aeroplane, and we're going to take it for a spin. We're currently parked up in Amsterdam as if this airplane diverted here, and we're going to take it for the short hop back over to the UK to London Gatwick, where it's going to be based. This is the A330-300, but this will be applicable to all the A330 variants. I'm going to take you through a full guide on how to fly the A330, but we're also going to have a bit of a review of it and see if it's worth your time. It's a very pretty model of the airplane, and we're going to see whether the airplane backs that up with the systems and handling underneath. Thank you to Toby and the Eye Tracker 5 for sponsoring today's video. This is the eye tracker that allows you to use your head to move the camera around in the simulator, something I've used in lots of streams and videos before, and we'll see it at various points throughout today's video. Stay tuned to the video for the chance to enter a sweepstake as well. The sweepstake could allow you the chance to win a Toby Eye Tracker 5 for yourself. There's also a discount if you follow my link in the description, but we'll hear more about that later on. At a few points in today's video, I believe there to be a bug where the aircraft levels off in out mode when I don't want it to. This was actually not a bug, it was my fault. It was caused by the key command for out mode in the Autopilot being assigned to my change view button. So whenever I changed outside, it would then level off. I figured that out later in the video. I've tried to edit it out where it is, but at some points it's still in the video. So please be aware that is not a bug. That was my mistake. What we have here is the A330-300, which is the larger variant of the A330. There is also the A330-200, slightly smaller, slightly cheaper to operate. That actually came about after the A330-300. They shrunk it down because of slightly reduced demand for the larger, heavier version. So slightly unusual way around. Normally the larger one comes later, but not always. So let's start with a bit of a walk around on this A330-300, the big one. This is it's a big machine. There's no doubt about it. It's tempting to sort of think of it, because of the flight day being so similar to the 320, as sort of not quite a full-size long-haul aeroplane. I don't know why, in my head I do that anyway sometimes, but it is a big machine. As you move around, you'll see all the usual bits. So we have our static ports covered up here. You wouldn't do that before every flight. That's a rare thing to do, actually. The reason is most airlines have risk assessed it as being more dangerous that you'll forget to take a cover out than the chance of a bug or something actually getting in there and blocking it. Same for the angle of attack sensors and so on. But anyway, nice detailing. We know these AnyBuild planes are nice in Flight Simulator 2024, and this one seems to be working relatively well. I'm using this livery from the Any Manager, but as we look around, the textures seem to be reflecting properly. Not something we've seen, unfortunately, on the 787 so far. But yeah, nice. It's also funny the A330 family has this sort of much higher nose. This generation, the 777, 767, 330, they have this sort of more like a cruise ship. It looks like you've got the bow coming along down here, whereas the modern way, 350, 787, the nose drops down to the bottom, a bit more like a train from the side angle. Yeah, I don't know how they came up with these decisions, but they obviously had decided. Same for things like winglets now have gone out of fashion, and now we have the sort of the smoothed out blended wingtips. It's a really nice looking model though. There's damage on the outside as well, or bugs on the nose, you know, bits of paint missing and so on, bits of grime moving backwards across it. Yeah, it's a very nice thing to look at. I think we do actually need to, let's just tick off a few of these things. Crucially, I want to get rid of those engine covers, which we've done, and we'll get rid of all these pitot static covers, please. That would be embarrassing. It would be a very bad day to take off, and it has actually caused crashes before, which is why they're so red, so visible, and like I say, most airlines don't put those covers on anymore. But yeah, you carry on with the walk around. Long way back to the engines on the 300. Otherwise, a pretty standard airplane. It's pretty much like a you know, like everything else we've seen so far. You've got your air conditioning packs, the outlets, and that's back here. That looks like the refueling panel. Oh no, water drain valve. There you go. That is different to the 320. And our main for landing gear. I like that in Flight Simulator when you walk around, you automatically duck underneath the aeroplane. I don't know if you'd have to do that on the 330. Certainly at 777 you wouldn't. And here's those big Rolls-Royce engines. Again, really nice detail on these. Love it. So we're going to take this thing for a full flight, as I said. I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be a Rolls-Royce engine, so we'll have TPR or EPR compared to just the N1 sensor for the thrust out the engine. Split ailerons, another thing that has been sort of resigned to the history books now. Most airliners just run with one, and then they have enough redundant systems to power them. But back when Airbus made this, they obviously wanted to have split controls still. The thing that you'll notice with aircraft is just reducing complexity, and this is where in some ways the 330 was ahead of its time, because you've got the fact that it has only single stage flaps. They're not double slotted, so that reduces complexity, reduces drag, although it does reduce lift slightly unless you design them well, which I'm sure Airbus did. And it has a lovely big wing as well that enables it to do that. The landing gear looks pretty small though when I see it like this. It looks similar to the 7.8 size. And the other thing that you've got with the 330 is there's no inboard aileron. So Boeing still, even the 777X and the 787 have an inboard aileron here, but Airbus are not interested in that. They haven't had it for a long time. Even the 380 doesn't have it. I think they had it only on their A300 and so on, very early ones. And around the tail, yeah, lovely. Like I say, big machine. Right, what we'll do then is we'll get ourselves into the flight deck and get it into the air. There is some nice detailing though. Look at this. Outflow valves open. Or maybe these are the pack outlets. And then you've also got hot, the decals written appropriately on the airplane. Yeah, this is a good quality for a default airplane. So far ahead of what we got before. So here we are on the flight deck then. Airplane is cold and dark, as we said, so it's completely unpowered. We can go over to our EFB. This might be off, but you can just turn it on with the button here. And it's a very good EFB. If you go down to options, you can then enter your SimBrief pilot ID, which I've done. Then if you've loaded a flight plan into SimBrief, it will load into the sim very easily. Now, you may not have SimBrief, in which case you can do it through the Microsoft Flight Simulator Planner, which I have shown in previous videos, and I'll show you just in a second. But I would recommend SimBrief. I think it's easier to use, and it also includes things like fuel, which the inbuilt Microsoft Flight Simulator Planner at the moment does not include. But yeah, there you go. So put that in, and then you can change a few options like linking some instruments, IRS alignment. I put it to fast, rudder controls, tell it yes, I do want that. So a few other things in there. And you can also, crucially, calibrate your throttles, which you do want to do so that they sit in the right place over here. Good. Right. First of all, I'll go back to the dashboard, and then you can just import from SimBrief. And there it is. Amsterdam to Gatwick, and it's loads us in some weather, and we can see what's going on, which is very nice indeed. You could also bring up the EFB for Microsoft Flight Simulator, and you can go to route on the top left, and then you can add a departure airport, so that would be EHAM. Then we are going to cruise at flight level, let's put it in at 250. Oh, I must have the double bind there. So sorry, 260, we'll do evens going in that direction, even flight level. Then we are going to depart from runway, let's depart from runway 24. And we're going to arrive into Gatwick. And then what you can do is you can add the departure that you want to fly. So let me just see if I can find one suitable for us today. Let's go with the Valco 3 Sierra, which will take us out via Idrid. And then you click Change Procedure. And then find route, and it draws a route for you, which ends at Ipcus, and then you can add an arrival into Gatwick. And then what's really handy is you can see it's already given us an ILS and Ipcus, so we've got to have an arrival coming in from sort of the northeast of London. So that's a bit tricky to figure out, but if you click on them, so you can see that that's wrong. That's wrong. That's wrong. Now, you don't need to worry too much about this because, of course, you're just going to connect it through in the FMC, which we'll do all together later. That's in the northwest. That's in the southeast. So you could, yeah, as ever, you're just trying to connect the puzzle pieces, really. So you've got lots of different arrivals here, but it doesn't really matter too much because you'll see in a second it won't change anything. But yeah, you can then file that with ATC and you can send the routing to your avionics. But I'm going to show you how to load them all up yourself anyway, or to download it from SimBrief, either or. Good. And then you could obviously save that flight plan. And that's it, really. Your charts are also available in here because we can click on this and then we'll see all of our Amsterdam charts. And you'll see there are a million of them. So we'll need to work out which runway we're taking off from. All stuff we'll do shortly. So there we go. We'll be the version 222. And then we have our flight plan from SimBrief here. Now this includes your fuel figures, you see, minimum takeoff fuel 11764, which the EFB just doesn't provide, because if you go to fuel here, it doesn't know what's going on. So that's the basics of the flight planning. Now let's get the airplane powered up. We'll go back to the EFB. We're going to click on the aeroplane because I want the checklists, and I'll go to checklists. And here we go. I'm going to set it to expert level and reset all. And pre-flight walk around. Well, we've done that. We've already walked around the outside of the airplane. So we're going to move along to the preliminary cockpit prep. This is the basic safe securing of the airplane. So we'll have the engine masters 1 and 2 off. We've got the engine start selector in the middle here to norm. And then we have the radar. Weather radar system is off, off, and off. Predictive wind shear is off. Gain doesn't matter too much. Mode selector doesn't matter. And landing gear lever is down. Wiper selectors, both sides, off and off. Battery 1 and 2 and APU battery check. So we're going to check the voltage is okay on those batteries, which we can do up here. All look reasonable. So yeah, they're looking good. And then we're going to put them on. All three of those are now on. Then we want to put on the external power. So we're going to put external power B into auto and A into on. Slightly different to the A320 where you just have external power on or off, but you do have two. So one goes into on and one goes into auto. You're going to see that this is a very transferable airplane. If you fly the 320, this is all going to make a lot of sense. You can then do an APU fire test should you choose to, which is hidden in the 330. Over here. Test. Works nicely. You normally need to wait for the flight warning computer to come online, but there we go. An APU master switch can go on, which is down here, same place as the 320, and then start. Give it a couple of seconds before you do that, and then start, otherwise it won't work. You can monitor that APU start down here, and we should see it all coming to life as normal. That is max brightness. The sun is glaring right off that screen. This does happen in the real airplanes quite often. So hopefully that will bring to life. Flap open, there we go. And if we jump outside, I think the flap on the 330 is underneath the tail, just like on the 320. So it works in the same way. Which is actually a really good place for it. Yeah, there's the inlet there. So it's just like on the 320. It's a great idea because what happens on the aircraft with the inlet on the top is that snow and de-icing fluid and so on can get drawn in down the top and into the APU. And there it is. You can even see the exhaust coming out the back. A much improved exhaust system in Flight Simulator 2024, I've got to say. So airplane slowly springing to life here. Airplanes are much happier once they have electrical power and air running through them. They start to dry out and sensors start to come back to life. Even if you're having a few trouble with some of them, sometimes just pumping air through them can make a big difference. So there we go. APU is slowly getting there. And that is the APU start. We're monitoring it. And then we can get rid of the external power once it's online, but we'll wait to see that in just a moment. There comes the generator. There's a nicely modelled APU start. All coming online. There we go, 100%. 400 Hertz on the APU generator. That's all looking good. APU is available. And if we look on the overhead panel, that's on. We've got the green avail and the APU generator is online. So that means if we go to the elect page, we should see evidence that the APU is now feeding us an external power. You can see external power B is no longer feeding us and A is because we have A on. So what I'm going to do is just get rid of A and we can actually get rid of B as well. Good. Next, I'm going to turn on the APU bleed. Like I say, I want to get some air running through the airplane because it's always good for them. All white lights off, cross bleed auto. So what this is saying now is just for the air conditioning panel, but I'm actually going to do this as a flow now, and then that will naturally cover all of these because this is taking you through the entire setup of the airplane. So what we're going to do is start down here, and we've got to put the crew supply for oxygen on. We can put the ground control on as well so that the voice recorder is recording already. GWS system, so basically no white lights on any of these panels up here. Then we get to the IRSs. We're going to put them to nav, so 1 goes to nav, 2 goes to nav, 3 goes to nav. They're on battery. That light should go out in just a moment. It does that as an initial test to make sure that they will run on the battery. And there we go. Now they're aligning. I'm going to put the on the lighting panel, we'll put the strobe lights to auto, the nav system lights on, all the other lights can stay off. Then we're going to have the emergency lights to arm, no smoking to auto, seatbelts are off for now, but we'll pretend we've fueled, we'll put them on. And that's it. Engine anti-ice and wing anti-ice all off, probe window heat is in the normal auto position. You can also force it on, but we'll leave it in auto. Cabin pressurization in auto as well, it would be white manual if it was in manual. APU bleed is on, we've got the cross bleed in auto, all the white lights out. Electrical panel, all the white lights out. Generator fault lights are expected because the engine generators aren't running. Next is the fuel panel, we can turn on all the fuel pumps, and same for the hydraulics, we don't want to see any white lights. We can test the engine fire masters. Sounds good. Over here, we're not doing manual start, we're not doing N1 mode. These are for if there's problems at the start or the engine instruments, and one mode is a Rolls-Royce specific thing when you're using TPR or EPR. But there we go, leave it all off. And same up here, we're going to leave all of these alone. This is a simple airplane to operate. It is just a 320, isn't it, really? You can see that very clearly here. I'm going to set the QNH, which is 1013. Ignore the weather in here. I actually have, I am using a weather preset, but I will have constraints, and I'll have VOR 1 showing, and we'll put the flight directors on. We'll set up the rest of this once we are ready with our departure, but we can expect it to be something like 4,000 feet. I'll set 39 for now. Moving down here, we've still got QNH 1013 on our standby instrument. Terrain on ND, I can turn on, it doesn't really matter. North ref, no, where that's for if you're going very far north and you need to change it to true when the magnetic north goes behind you, weird things like that. Landing is down, 3 greens, auto brake is off, and the anti-skid nose wheel steering is on. Terrain on ND, optional, gear down, and landing gear gravity extension guard closed. It looks like it's modelled though, you can click on it, which I won't do now in case it activates. All of our switching panel into the norm position, just like on the 320. And let's just clear that and leave this on the normal systems page for this stage, which is the doors page. Great feature that. The Boeings don't seem to bother with that. Thrust levers are at idle, engine master switches are off, mode select to norm, speed brake is away, flaps are up, and that matches our ICAS screen. Oh, it's good to say ICAS. And then down here, we have our backup or a spare MCDU. Parking brake is on, rotor trim is at 0. Good. So that covers pretty much all of this, you can see. So this even takes you through doing a test of the brakes and so on, if you really fancied it, which is pretty cool actually. I like that. But yeah, there we go. We've got the airplane in a position where we're ready now to load at the FMC. And this continues on, you can see. So that now will take you through all the overhead panel like we just did. But there's a lot of instructions on there. So hopefully my video will help you out if you don't fancy doing that. And the next one I will go through to will be the before pushback. Right, let's close that. Next up is the FMS, MCDU, MCDU. By the way, let's just appreciate for a second how nice these textures are. Look at the grime around the pedals and so on. And this is true. These airplanes do get grubby on the floor. You got to remember, pilots eat in these seats. It always surprises me that that's allowed, but the only other way to do it would be that pilots couldn't eat in the seat and have to have time in the back to eat every flight or in between flights. So yeah, it's unlikely to change. So it's very interesting. There is a problem, or has happened in the past, where drinks have been spilled onto this console, and that causes a bit of an issue. So yeah, it's something you have to be careful of. But it does mean crumbs accumulate everywhere. So you have to clean up after yourself. Something that yeah, a lot of pilots have to remember. Right, FMC 1 in the MCDU. We're in a Trent 700 Rolls-Royce. So you'll see up here we have the N1 is lower down and the EPR is at top. We'll talk about that once we're underway. But good. And we're in a correct database, which is always rare for my videos. So this is now going to be the classic diff SRIP acronym, so, or initialism. So starting with data, we check the database and that the airplane is correct, and the idle perf figures, don't worry about that too much, are all there. Then we go to init A, so diff SRIP, so data init A. Now we can do init request, or we can type it in. So we are in Amsterdam, and we're going to Gatwick. So you type it in the bottom and then just drop it in there. But what I'm going to do is, and I would recommend you do this as well, is do the request from SimBrief. It will load in the same information. So that's the route. That is the airport alternate. This is our flight number, cost in X of 90, cruising at flight level 240, slightly lower than I thought. And it's uploaded the route. So that is the init A page. So diff data init A. Next is the flight plan. So we go to flight plan, and now we'll see it's going out via Idrid, Abned, Amriv, Momic, and then we can scroll down with these arrows and see the route all the way through. Looks good. You can also, on your EFIS control, go to plan. Oh, you can bring up the engines there. That's neat. Plan, and then scroll through. So Idrid is the first point, and then the flight plan takes us all the way through and ends up at Gatwick. So that looks good. So that is flight plan. But in the Airbus, we also type in the departure on the flight plan page. So departure, I've said we're going to take off from runway 24, just behind us here. And here's the chart for it. Runway 24, take off, and then we'll do the Valco 3 Sierra departure, which goes to Idrid, which would make sense. So all we do is select runway 24, and then scroll down, Valco 3 Sierra, and there's no transition available. So that's it. Then we have to hit insert, and now we can check through the routing. I'm not sure it would say runway 24 separately. It should say EHAM 24. But anyway, here's my chart. Here's my nav display, zoomed in as much as it goes. This is where the 330 misses some features that more modern long-haul aircraft do have, like a ground map and so on, although I'm sure Airbus will fit it for you if you pay for it. I don't think we paid for it on this one, and certainly on the newer ones I'm sure it's available. But yeah, scroll through. AM001, AM051, AM009 above 2,500. You can see them on this page there, and you can see the magenta, and then Valco, which is correct, IDRID, and that now has a discontinuity. So what I'm going to do is connect it by pressing clear, Valco, IDRID, AVNED. That's now correct. We can also, while we're here, already load in the Gatwick stage. So we can put in the arrival by going to arrivals. We're expecting the ILS 26 left at Gatwick, and then whichever star we think we're going to do. Now this is where SimBrief can be handy. You can actually go and look at your flight plan. If we go down to page 2 or 3 or 4, there it is. You can see what it expects us to do. Tebra 2 Golf connects up with Tebra and Gatwick. Now, if you're flying on VATSIM or with air traffic control, then this will be different. But if you're just flying on your own like I am today, then you can see the arrival, departure and arrival. So although it had a different runway, 18 left, I'm going to take off from runway 24. You could just use 18 left and use the Valco 5 Echo. So SimBrief does give you a fully connected flight plan, and that's sometimes the easiest way around this problem. This will particularly work well if you're using live weather, because the runways here will be the same, because it does take into account the wind. But they expect us to land on 08 right at Gatwick. I know we're not going to do that. We're going to land on 26 left, but it's the Tebra arrival. So if I put in Tebra and now zoom out, it should take us from our arrival point, there we go, all the way around. It should connect nicely. Insert. And now we'll just scroll through once more, and hopefully we'll see, there we go, it goes from Tebra and then takes us all the way around and in. The reason it does all this long routing round is because of London airspace. There's too many airports, so you have to go around to the south really. You can't descend through North London because that's where the aeroplanes are approaching Heathrow. Good. So now we have the full flight plan. So that is diff data init a flight plan. Secondary flight plan, I'm just going to copy the active. It's just the same. It's just a backup sitting in there. Then we're on to diff srip. So DIFSR. RadNav can just be auto-tuned these days. It's very unlikely you need to tune something. This is an RNAV departure, so it does not require any specific VORs. You're just heading to these waypoints in the database, so that's fine. Next is init B. So now we go to init B, and here we're going to load in our weights. So I have not loaded the airplane, so let's see how this works in the AnyBuilds 330. What we're going to do is go to payload, and we can choose how many passengers we want, how much cargo we want, and the fuel. Now, how many passengers can we have? 440. I'll be impressed if we fit those on. So you can tune those like that, or, once again, load from SimBrief. How great's that? So that's just put in a 0 fuel weight directly and a fuel figure, and we're going to go with exactly the right fuel figure. Let's see if it works. 12.3 tons. That gives us a gross weight of 160.8. So that's light. That is very light. The maximum weight, 233. That's really interesting. I always think of the 330-300 as being a bit bigger than a Dreamliner, but that is a lower takeoff weight than the 787-9 even, let alone the 787-10. So just show you the 787's a bit bigger than I think sometimes. Good, so we'll apply that load. You must select apply, we'll do it instant. And let's just check we have our 12.3 tons on board. No, run out of fuel, and I think it's loaded back. There it is, 12.3, okay, good. Otherwise the APU was going to turn off pretty quickly. And there's our figures. Right, so now we can do the init B page, because we've loaded in the fuel and the weights. So you can just select it, and it does load it straight for you, which frankly is the easiest way to do it. The real airplane, of course, cannot do that. So there it is, 149.6, 26.3. Let me just check the 0 fuel weight, 149.6, and then the CG, 26.3. You would in real life always round up. This is rounded down. It's for 100 kilos, not going to make a difference on 150 tons worth of aeroplane, but there we go. So that is done. Block fuel. Does it work there as well? You can just click that, 12.3, which is correct, 12.3. Gives us our expected takeoff weights and the fuel figures. So give it a second, and what it's doing now is, this is a really important page. What it's doing is it's giving us, that's the expected fuel to taxi out. Then we've got 4.1 fuel burnt to get there, so that's from takeoff to touchdown in Gatwick. We've got a reserve figure of 200 kilos, which we want to keep unless not needed. Then we've got the alternate fuel we need to land with, because that's in case we need to divert. And then we've got the final fuel figure, which is final reserves, very important. That's similar actually to what the 787 reserves would be, 2.2. And then that means that you add those together, 2.8 plus 2.2 means that 5 tons is our minimum fuel for landing. This reckons we've got 2.4 extra. That's presumably because it hasn't got the winds, but there we go. Good. So that is our init B, diffs RIT. Finally, performance, P. Now, to do performance in the 330, let's see, it should be nice and straightforward. We'll go to takeoff. I'm going to synchronize the runway, so it loads in the runway from the FMS. The winds and so on are a little bit out because I'm actually running it in standard. Aircraft controllers, they won't put in physical. So let's type it in like this. I think that's a better way. So 15 degrees. We'll stick with a bit of a tailwind. That's fine, and we'll put in 1013. Good, and then it's loaded in the weights. We'll do air conditioning on, because that's been packs on, anti-ice off. We won't force toga. We'll calculate. And here we go. So, really straightforward. I like it a lot. We're going to take off with flaps of 1 plus F. Yeah, great, which makes sense. So I'm going to go over here, runway 24, no takeoff shift, and flaps 1, which is 1 plus F. It's the same thing. Then we can do a flex temp of 58. That's where we tell it it's a higher temperature outside than it is, so it puts less fuel in, so we use less engine power because we don't need it. Then we're going to go speeds, 149, 152, 153, 149, 152, 153. There we go, and that is diffs RIP. That's the data, init A flight plan, secondary flight plan, radnav, init B, and performance done. Great. Ground handling is really easy. I like it in the ini builds. It's so integrated. We go ground. Let's close up that door. Let's get rid of the chocks. Let's get rid of the jetty. Let's get rid of the catering. Let's close up the cargo doors. And the pushback is ready down there. So hopefully now... Oh, no, I've got to close that cargo door. And catering needs to go away. Thank you very much. Good. We also don't need a GPU because we're on our APU, electrical power. And we've already got rid of the engine and pitot covers. Great. Oh, you can even do the cabin lights. That's great, isn't it? Right, so that is the aeroplane pretty much ready to go. Final step then is to just make sure we're happy with the departure routing and the SID and the taxi. So we looked at the actual takeoff, so that's all reasonable and fine. The minimum altitude here is above 2,500. Valco 3 Sierra. Air traffic control would give you a stop altitude if we can't find it on the chart. Transition altitude is 3,000 feet, so anything above that is a flight level anyway. So I'm going to put 3,000 feet in the window. They do use some low altitude, so we'll say 3,000 feet is our cleared altitude for this departure. Again, air traffic control in real life would tell you. And finally, we're going to go to the airport charts and look at the ground chart for taxi out. There it is. Zoom, zoom, zoom. We are up here. We are going to push back and then taxi out and head down here and then take off from runway 24. So finally then we need to set up the automatics for doing that takeoff. You can see here we're in all the wrong modes right now, so I'm going to turn off the flight directors and that gives us open speed windows and so on. So now we can turn them back on, flight director, and what this gives us is a much better picture. So you could see earlier what we had was that we had the green bars showing, which on this stage in an Airbus we don't want to see. The reason that is because if you round this with altitude window down to the ground, then it just captures and it gets all confused if you turn it off and on while it's like this. So if your flight directors do not look right, just turn them off and on. That's the easiest way in the Airbus. So let's say you have them off, you want to turn them on, and you're going to see your speeds on the left, 149, 153. Climb nav in blue, those are armed, not active. And then one FD2, which means the left flight director and the right flight director are both functioning and ready to go. And that's it. That's all we want to see here. It's important that we don't have anything different from that. It's a sign that, you haven't quite set it up right, especially if you have any green modes. Shouldn't see any green modes at the moment. Good. So we got constraints. I'm going to put the rows to arc like normal, and I'm going to zoom in. Again, we don't have a taxi map on this airplane, sadly, but there we go. We don't need to set the speed because it's automatically got V2 of 153 here. Great feature of the Airbus. We don't need to set the heading because it automatically knows which way we're taking off. Great feature of the Airbus. We're in heading vertical speed, 3,000 feet, and we shouldn't see a VS. If you see a VS, it means you've done something like that, and you'll see VS 0 or whatever you've set, and that should not be there because, again, that's a green mode. I don't want that. So let's click that away. That doesn't work, you see. So now it's back to the old off and then on. And there we go, back to where we should be. Great. So that is the EFIS setup, our automatics and our guidance. Just while I was setting up there, I've discovered you can even open the windows on this, which is really great. Good detail that. So you've got to click that forwards and then click the door again, just like the 320. Brilliant. Good. So it's time for the checklist. What we're going to do is go back to our aeroplane checklists, and what you have here, we don't have electronic checklist on the 330. Again, it's very much like a 320. So what we're going to do is go to the before pushback or start. So final load sheet, we've already done the final load sheet. We've done the zero fuel weight and the CG. We loaded all that in with our performance. Final takeoff, FMS data, seating position, FMS, external power is gone. And that's gone. We did that through the EFB, removing the external power. Next is before engine start. So what we're going to do here is just make sure we've finished everything we need to do. Now this is a checklist, so really we should have everything done. It's not quite the procedure. So I'm going to make sure the thrust levers are closed and at idle. We're going to put the beacon on. We've got the passenger signs on. Transponder over here, if we had a code from air traffic control, we would type it in, but I'm going to put it to auto. It means that air traffic control can see that we're about to move. They would of course cleared us already, so they wouldn't surprise them. Right, so we've completed the cockpit prep. ACARS is done. What we could do, speaking of ACARS, is also load in the wind. If I go to init, wind, you can see it has already loaded them in. So that's really easy. Great. It's got the climb wind and next phase. There we go. We can request the cruise wind and then the next phase, the descent winds are already in. Now for a flight this short, really not going to make much of a difference, but there they are. Back to perf. I'll have perf on this side, flight plan on this side, typically at this phase. There we go. That's good that they're separate. I like that. In the real aircraft, of course, they're totally separate. Gear pins covers, we've removed signs are on an auto. MCDU data and IRS monitor. Check that all the IRS computers are in nav. So to check this, what this is referring to is checking that your navigation systems are working properly. This is becoming a feature that you see more of with GPS spoofing and jamming these days. But if you press data, then we can see the position monitor and we can see that the IRSs are all in nav mode down here. We can also go to data and then you can go to IRS monitor and see IRS is in nav. So it's important if you're going to go a long way with the ocean that these things are set up properly to start with. Fuel quantity, we have our 12.2 tons now. It's dropping slowly. And takeoff data, back to perf, is all set. BARF, we're on 1013, which is correct. Sea level. Good. Finally then, before engine starts, obtain pushback, speak to ATC. We've closed the windows and all the doors are closed, which you can see down on this screen. Flight deck doors closed. Slides will be armed by the cabin crew. Beacon is on. Thrust levers are at idle, which they are. Accumulated brake pressure. You want to check over here that it is in the green band and the brake needles are up. It shows that there is the correct pressure in them, so we're all good, so we don't accidentally run someone over. Parking brake handle should be on, which is down here, and it's on exactly the same as the 320. And those will still in disconnect memo. Well, it won't show yet because we haven't got the tug attached. Let's see if I can convince the tug to attach. So I'll go to pushback. Let's just tell it I want to go aft. And now I think the tug outside is going to attach. So as it does this, I imagine we'll see the necessary disconnect message come, but I'm going to tick that one. It's important in the real airplane. It's less important in the simulator because, of course, it's just a function of when the tug does and doesn't connect. So that is it before engine start checklist. And now we have the below the line, which is flight door closed, windows closed, beacon on, thrust levers idle, parking brake set, transponder we've already set. Right, engine start time. I'm not going to run through this because it's not a checklist in the real airplane, but we will have the after engine start. So I'll show you how to do this and the flows. Right, it appears there's a bug with the chocks. I think we've done well actually to have not too many bugs so far, but what it means is we can't remove them with the EFB. We have to jump back into the flight deck, which I will do. And I need to jump out of the aeroplane. Let's see if I can do that. Thank you. This is the sort of problem solving you do see pilots doing, running around at this stage. Goodbye chocks, there we go. Run back in. Yeah. Weirder things have happened. I've run off aeroplanes in order to solve things outside. Passengers always look at you with a bit of confusion, understandably, but we're there to keep everything safe and punctual. Close the door and jump back into our seat. Right, let's try that again. Aft pushback, please. Here it comes. I'm optimistic now. That is a new record for the worst pushback I've seen in Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024. Pretty impressive. We didn't hit anything, but we are properly in the middle of nowhere. That's fine. Parking brake will be set. They will disconnect, and it's time to start up those engines. So all we need to do here, we make sure we have the APU bleed on, which we do. Turn the ignition start to start, and it will bring up the engine page. It will also power the FADEX, and then we can start up the engines. So I'm going to start up engine number 1. See the pressure go in, N3 spinning, and soon after we'll see some more things spinning. Like N2 will start shortly. Might just turn up the audio a little bit so you can enjoy the sounds. There's our N2. And then eventually N1 will start ticking over. There we go. Again, much better heat exhaust on these simulators, definitely. Now what we should notice is that some of the hydraulics would have come online. So our ailerons, yep, they are now in line. Elevators have gone into line. Yeah, plane is powered up. It could fly now. Wouldn't take off on one engine, but it certainly could carry on flying on one engine quite happily. Back on the flight deck, and you'll see that that's it. It's all up and running. So time to start engine number 2. Put it on. Same thing will happen. Same sequence of events. It's all controlled by the FADEX system anyway, so they are effectively automatic starts. You have those buttons up there. These are manual start buttons, which you would use if you don't want the automatic system to do it. The reason to do that would be because you have things like a strong tailwind on the engines, or the temperature's too cold, or some other reason that might trip up the automatic system into cancelling the start halfway through. Could also be that you've got an MEL, so one of your ignition systems is broken. So you can see here B is showing. That means it's using ignition system B. There is also A, and if you do a manual, it will use both. So there could be reasons where you want to force it to use both ignition systems. Nice, I like that. I can hear that rumble. There's a rumble coming through from the interior, which is great. Now that heat exhaust is a little overdone from this nice cabin view. It gives a slight sense of there being a fire out there, but good. And then it says avail, which means it's done. So once they both go to avail, that means we are in a position now to run the after start flow. Now, this is something I've done many, many times. Let's see if I can remember how to do it, seeing as I now fly the Boeing. Down here, we put the engine start switch to normal. Then on the overhead panel, I can turn off the APU bleed. We don't need that anymore. We don't need the engine anti-ice, and we actually don't need the APU either, so I'm going to turn that off as well. What's also going to happen is we're going to arm the ground spoilers in case of a rejected takeoff, reset the rudder trim to 0, and set the flaps to 1, because that's what we told it, 1 over here. Finally then, I need to put in the takeoff trim into the trim wheel. We can go to our payload, and we'll see that the CG is 26.3 or 4.3 up. So you've got two ways to do this. You can set 4.3 up. So there's a little arrow, so 4.3 up would be about there. Oh, in fact, that's the only way to do it on this one. Oh no, if you go further across, you can see that also coincides with 26.3, somewhere around there. And you can go to flight control, and you'll see it here, 4.3 up. Perfect. Right, now have I remembered everything? We do the flight controls once we're taxiing out. It's an Airbus, so checklist here to pick it up after engine start. Engine start selector's norm, APU bleed is off. That was the switch up here. Engine anti-ice not required. It's not below 1 degree. That's an interesting requirement. Most aeroplanes, it's 10 degrees or below with visible moisture, so I'm surprised to see that. Interesting. I wonder what the real procedure is. Wing anti-ice is not required, so that's off. APU master switch is off. Nozzle steering fault light, so our nozzle steering is working because it's not showing nozzle steering here. And ground spoilers we've armed, so that was when we pulled these up. Next, the rudder trim should be in 0, which we've done. Flaps have been set, and they are at 1 plus F. Pitch trim we've set. And finally, that's what we need to do. We need to go to ECAM status. Nothing showing there. It's all normal. So that's done. Nozzle steering. Disconnect is gone. Ground crew is clear. After start checklist then. Anti-ice not required. ECAM status checked. Ground spoilers armed. Pitch trim is set, which we have at 4.3 up. Rudder trim is at 0. Ground equipment clear. Now we're going to taxi the airplane out. Good, so make sure it's all clear all around. Clear on the right, clear on the left. And what I'm going to do is turn on my head tracking. So that is going to be particularly useful for taxiing out, I would hope. Good. And it's all clear to right, all clear to the left. Let's turn on the taxi light. Could also do runway turn off. I tend to do both. I quite like having lots of lights on the airplane. And release the brake, and let's see if we can get it to move. And do an immediate right turn. There we go. Yes. Should be alright. Bit of power on the left engine. We're very, very light, so I'm not foreseeing any particular issues getting it to move here. What you can see is we've got alt showing in the PFD, so that mode has engaged again for some reason, so I need to fix that. I don't think we've done anything that could have done that, but yeah, that needs to be resolved. Right, here we go. Ah, we can look around the cabin like this as well. Oh yeah, we can watch TV. Sitting a bit low, I must say. There we go. That's better. Can do our flight control checks. Ah, but that's not registering in this drone view. So we want to go right here, I think. Get ourselves out the apron. Could have gone left either. Either way. All clear. We'll take this right here. Actually, I think it'll be second right out of Amsterdam. Let's go second right. Yeah, that'll put us in a good position. Big machine this, taxiing very easily because it's so light on this this departure today. I do like the grime and so on. It does look like a working airplane. So once we're taxiing out, something else we would do, we're on both engines already, so we would do our flight control checks. On the Airbus you have to do it twice because you've got to check both side sticks are working. So full right, full left, full down, full up, and you would do your rudder, which we have attached to our steering tiller, so a bit uncomfortable, but there it is. That's working nicely. And then the other pilot would take their side stick and do the same, because you need to check both side sticks are connected and functioning in the proper direction. Now, you saw that puff of smoke there. That was cool. I've never seen that detail in a sim before. Very impressive. Now that is the APU shutting down. You do see that on these airliners as they shut down these big APUs, because it's a powerful thing, you know, on this an airplane of this size. That's a reasonable sized jet engine sitting in the back, and as it shuts off, it can emit a puff. The reason it didn't shut off until then is because, of course, it was just cooling down the whole time. It has a lot of cooling down to do. Anyway, we've done the flight controls. An update on the brief is, well, we know the taxi routing is not going to change. The departure has not changed. We've got no special procedures. Taking off flap 1, climbing up to 3,000 feet on the Valco departure. So that's all fine. Next, we also can put the weather radar on if we want to. Transponder to TAR rate. Now you might be wondering how I know where I'm going. I do know Amsterdam Airport, so this is not too unfamiliar for me. You could, of course, also bring up your charts here. And then you can see the signs. The signs are quite good. So Sierra 6 is on our left. So, and we're on Bravo. So we're on Bravo. Sierra 7 is there. Sierra 6 is there. So we're already here. Yeah, this is our departure runway. So we're at Sierra 6, so we'll take that intersection. We have a good performance for it today. Very light aeroplane. Good. So yeah, back to the checklists. I won't run all of this because, again, this is the procedure. So I'll just continue with the procedure, but there is a before takeoff checklist, which is why it says to the line. So yeah, what we're going to do is we're going to go and set the auto brake to max and run the takeoff config. That looks good. I'll predictive wind shear. It's complaining about, so that is here. Put it to auto. Good. You do want that on, even if you don't use the weather radar. A nice day like this, you wouldn't need the weather radar particularly, especially in the daylight. But yeah, you need to put the predictive wind shear on, and then cabin ready. So that's the airplane in good shape. No amber brake temperatures or so on, so we're all good. So we've run our before takeoff checklist. Flight controls checked. Flight instruments checked. Briefing confirmed. Flaps, we have 1+F set and confirmed. V1 of 149, 152, 153, and a temperature of 58. Let's not miss this intersection though, it could get tricky. Transponder is auto and TARA. ECAM memo, we have takeoff, which means TO, takeoff, and no blue, so then there's nothing left to be done. Signs are on, spoilers are armed, flaps are set to takeoff. So this is what this is actually is telling us the ECAM memo. It's just a repeat of the same things. Auto brake at max, takeoff config, which we've pressed, is set to norm. Good. So that is before takeoff checklist complete. Next set is going to be the in-flight checklists. Now it's actually in the 330-300. It's a long plane, so let's see if we can keep those main gears from overrunning the sides. Look at the detail on the exterior. It's a lovely model, no doubt. Make sure as well, as you line up on the runway, you want to put the nose slightly through the centre line here. We need to oversteer, it's called. You don't want to waste too much time doing this. You don't want to run out of runway, but yeah, you want to roughly get the airplane so that its main wheels are in the middle of the runway. You can see there, I've underdone that. So, still sort of crawling forward. But again, not worth crawling too far forwards. Just get yourself close enough. You can correct it once you're rolling, as long as you're sensible. Again, we're supposed to go from full length, but you would, of course, in real life, triple check the performance to make sure it is definitely valid from where we are. And as you enter the runway, you're going to put the landing lights on, the strobe lights on, and I'll put the nose light to take off as well. You might also, some airlines will have you make an announcement to the cabin crew of some variety, but there we go. Good, so the airplane is now ready to go. Right, takeoff roll in the 330 or the 320, same thing. So half side stick forward, we're going to allow the engines to stabilize, about 50% M1. Release the brakes and then 2 clicks forward on the thrust levers until they're in the flex MCT takeoff detent, which is 2 clicks forward. Pretty straightforward. Let's give it a go. So parking brake is released. Oh, some nice sounds, although it does overshoot, which you shouldn't do. Yeah, it's gone a little bit too high. Okay, it's quite sensitive. There we go. So stabilized, engines are stabilized, brakes released, looking forwards, 2 clicks forwards. And you should see man flex 58 SRS. That's all the correct modes. It means the thrust is going to be set. Oh, some excellent sounds. I might turn those up a little bit for you. As we pass through 80 knots, you can see my side stick, see that little cross on the PFD. That shows where my stick's set to. 80 to 100, I'm going to release that to neutral. Keeping it straight with the rudder, looking out down to the end. Quite a long takeoff roll, actually. I'm surprised. Quite a lumpy runway too. There's V1 and rotate. Oh, quite twitchy on the rotate there initially. Positive rate and then the gear up. Keep pitching up. Initially towards 15 and then onto the SRS flight directors. And we're into nav mode. Now it could only be 15 degrees today because we're light. So yeah, rotate 3 degrees a second and then go to that SRS flight director and we're away. Yeah, very sensitive initial rotation there. Could be something to do with the weight we're at. I'm not sure. But good, away. Through acceleration, it's going to flash lever climb, like you can see there on the PFD. That means bring those thrust levers back 1 step to climb. And lower the nose. I'm not going to lower it all the way to the horizon or we'll start descending again. So I'll lower it to where it is. And it's gone into out mode, so it's trying to level us off now. What we can do above the green S, flaps can come to 0, flap 0. And it can accelerate to 250 knots. Navigation mode is engaged, so that's good news. Now it's not leveled off at 3000, so tell it what you want to do. You can set the 3000 and then pull, thrust climb, open climb. I'm now forcing it to go to 3000 feet by pulling, and then it goes into open climb where it will climb straight away to 3000. One alternative would be you could also push and it will go into managed climb and should re-climb up to 3000 as well. And there we go, speed out star, and now it looks like a much better capture of that initial altitude, so that's good. Some great sounds though. Nice views out today. Lovely winter day for flying. Good, so that's all worked nicely. We're level at 3000. Let's imagine air traffic control now clears us up to our cruising altitude of flight level 240. So I can put 240 in the window, and then you can have the little arrow up to push, thrust climb, climb, 240. So now we're leaving it in the managed climb mode by pushing it towards the aeroplane. Up it goes. Let's set standard because we're now going to a flight level. So we'll pull that, and that's why it was flashing. So standard flight level 240, and it changes to say flight level. Great feature of the Airbus. It puts it in the right place and it tells you that it's a flight level. Very good. The Boeing does not do that, sadly. You can see the next mode armed is out cruise. Now 320 wouldn't arm out cruise, it would just arm out, then it would drop into out cruise. Not sure what 330 does in real life, but there we go. Right, now we've done that, we can disarm those ground spoilers and we can come up here, turn off the landing lights. Actually no, they're in the wing, so we can leave those on, but we'll turn off the runway and the nose gear lights, just have the landing lights on for now. To 10,000 feet. Away we go, it's going to climb very fast, 4,000 feet per minute, no trouble, because of course we are nice and empty. Winding up on the range now just to see our routing. You can see there, gives us a topple climb arrow, the blue arrow, so this shows me that this airplane is got some good VNAV working in it. It does seem to be calculating. So around Idrid we should level off at flight level 240. Let's see if that comes true. We can also run the after takeoff checklist. After takeoff checklist, APU bleed is off, APU master is off, engine start is in ignition, it's down here. Sorry, it's in norm instead of ignition start. It's very rare to use ignition start on that. TCAS is already in TARA, engine anti-ice we're not required, wing anti-ice not required. If the temperature goes below 10 degrees and there's visible moisture outside, I will turn on the anti-ice. Now that is something that the Boeings have as automatic, whereas the Airbus 320 and 330, it's manual. So if we see a TAT of plus 10 or below, it's currently plus 6, and we have visible moisture, then I'm going to put these on. The reason we do it at plus 10 is because you can still get ice forming once you're in that temperature range. Because of reduction in air. Air loses temperature when it's accelerated and loses pressure. Is why when you have like a deodorant can, you spray it, it gets cold, doesn't it? Because the pressure's reducing. So that means that even at higher temperatures, you can actually start to get things freezing in certain areas. Anyway, 10,000 feet's past now. We don't need the engine anti-ice. Landing light can now go off. I'm going to let the passengers run around for the short flight. And yeah, looking good. Great livery, isn't it, really? Also, you can see that supercritical wing, the way the bottom of the wing bulges and then comes up at the back, something for wings that go near the speed of sound. That's quite a common design, so airliners often have that, jet airliners anyway. Nice detail here, the outer tank transfer has happened. As you go below a certain fuel figure, the Airbus is going to start transferring fuel around, so it's taking it from the outer tanks, putting it into the main tank where it's accessible for the engine. It's not accessible in that outer tank. There is also a trim tank back here on the A330, which they seem to have modelled nicely and correctly, which is great, but we haven't used it today. We have not taken enough fuel, and if you go to the fuel panel, which is up here, you can actually fill around with that trim tank as you need to, and you can force it to go forwards. You can drive the fuel out of it if you wanted to get access to it quickly, I suppose. I'm sure there's a checklist that requires that. Perhaps for overweight landing, things like that. Right, good. Making our way up to 240. Now, this is a short flight. We've already entered the arrival into the MCDU. Oh, by the way, yes, it said there, new cruise out 250, because I accidentally wound the altitude too high. So if you do that, if you put it above the cruise, so you saw earlier I accidentally went to 250, it will replan the new cruise level. Again, something the Boeing doesn't do. It's a great feature. So let's say I accidentally expand it to 27, it will change that to 270. There you go, new cruise at 27. Now we aren't going to do that, we're going to stop at 240. So I'll put back to 240, and then I can put in 240 back in there, and that will make sure it goes into out cruise when it does level off. But otherwise, airplane's in good shape. We're going to level off and do a bit of a systems check, and then we need to set up very quickly for our arrival. So to plan for the arrival, basically the big thing to do in the MCDU, you need to go in a little hat shape like this. Flight plan, RADNAV, progress, perf, fuel prediction, secondary. Now don't worry, I'm going to go through it all with you right now. Flight plan we've already done. You remember we did that before we took off. What is it we did? Well, we told it by pushing on this bottom left key next to our destination airport. We then went to arrival, and you put in the ILS you're expecting. So we want the ILS 26 left, and then the star, Tebra 2 Golf. And we could put in a VIA as well. I think this one is via timber, actually. Yes, it is. We have timber over here. So I can actually put timber as the approach via, and then insert that. And that is our flight plan completed. You see now it has the line all the way through. So that's looking good. By the way, our last 1,000 feet to go now. Like I said, did not take long to get up here. Speed out cruise. That's good. And it will level off at 240. Pretty slow. The 330 is slow for a long-haul aeroplane. There's no way around that. Decimal 7.1, we are low down here, but even in the cruise, it's slower than things like the 787, 777, or the 350, which are much quicker, including the 380 actually. Now it's going to accelerate up. You see the magenta speed bug. We can tell it the speed we want by putting on the speed window and then winding it back. I could also press speed Mach to force it to fly a Mach number. So let's leave it. Let's do it Mach 70 just to slow it down a bit. I don't want to be going too fast here because we've got a little bit to do. It's telling me to set manage speed because it's planned on that speed, so all the fuel predictions and so on will be wrong unless we do fly the right speed. Not an issue for a short flight like this, but over a long flight, that can make a big difference. Anyway, and it also says check desk data. So it's complaining we haven't told it the weather where we're landing, so it can't think things through properly, including the pressurization system. So let's get that done. So flight plan we've now done. Next is RadNav. It has tuned the ILS at London Gatwick. IWW 110.9, course is 256, we're landing on runway 26 left, so it should be around about 260, so it is. We don't need to do that ourselves, it does it automatically. You would check it, of course. Progress page, in here, I'm going to type in the threshold, so I'm going to put in the airport code, EGKK, Gatwick, 26 left, and that is going to be our arrival. So that's the distance to actually touchdown, whereas this distance over here is the distance our flight plan is going to fly. So we're 128 miles in a straight line to the runway, but we've actually got to fly 153 nautical miles. Next is perf, and this is the one it's complaining about. It's gone into cruise phase correctly, so I'm really impressed with the builds so far. Next page is descent, and next is the approach. So in here, we're going to put in the 1013 QNH, the temperature of 15 degrees, and remember, I know these because I've set the weather myself. You could take it from here, update this one, and it will give you the weather and the QNH here and the temperature, which is really handy. But I've got a preset going, so I'm going to just say my numbers. Next up is the minimums, which you would get from the chart, which you can again go to your EFB. Now it does take a little while to swap over. Actually, it does it quite late. I hope that they'll change this so we can get hold of these charts earlier, because at the moment it just gives us EHAM. I don't know if anyone in the comments knows how to make that change earlier from EHAM to Gatwick. It will swap over to Gatwick, but it might take a little while. I'm just going to put in minimum at 400 because the weather's so nice, but that would go into Barrow if you're doing a normal ILS like us. Landing flap full. If we go around, you put in the go around altitude into the engine out acceleration altitude over here, and there we go. That is the perf page done. So we put in the weather, which is QNH, temperature and wind. We told it the minimums, 400. I'll show you on the charts later where that is. And we told it we're landing flat full. Very low approach speed, 131, very low. And over here we have the engine out acceleration. Again, this isn't really too important. You'd only need this if you have an engine failure and then you go around. So not something you'd be expecting to do in your home sim at this stage, probably. Finally, fuel prediction. Just check everything looks sensible. It does. We're landing with an extra of 2.6 tons. So we have half an hour extra fuel. That's great. So we're landing well above our requirement of 5 tons because we're landing with 7.7 tons. Yeah, 2 and a bit extra. Secondary flight plan. Just copy the active again. Nothing else to do there. So that is our hat. Flight plan, RadNav, progress, perf, fuel, secondary. That's the FMS setup. I'm going to go auto brakes low. We're very light. It's a nice long runway. So low auto brakes should be fine for vacating at Gatwick. You would do the landing performance, of course. You wouldn't just guess that like I just did there. What you would do is you'd calculate it. There is not a calculator available here right now. This is just takeoff, yeah. So if you're on a long runway, low. If you're on a short auto runway, medium. What long and short means to you, that's going to depend on the weight and the temperature and so on. If you're not sure, go medium. We don't use max for landing. Max is a takeoff setting for rejected takeoffs only. And there we go. That is the MCDU, the Air Flight Management System, pretty much set up. Now, let's enjoy the airplane for just a moment. Some details. You have sun visors, which is cool. Much better than the ones in the 787. I like that. And do they work here? Yes, look at this. You can be well sheltered from the sun. Long-haul pilots spend a lot of their time trying to block out the sun, because if you fly back from, let's say you fly back from the Far East to Europe, then you could spend the entire flight, 14 hours, in the daylight. It's quite ridiculous. So, yeah, especially in summer. So you will want to block out that sunshine. So, yeah, nice detail. Do we have a tray table? We do indeed. Again, nice scratches, nice detailing, some nice sounds. Yeah, it's great. It's just a great airplane. This is of the same quality as the A300, which we got the A310, which we got for free in Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020. But it's a modern Airbus. You know, this is a really, really great thing to get included with the simulator. It's a shame, really, when you see how nicely this one works. It's so frustrating to me that the 787, the aircraft that I fly in the real world, is full of so many bugs still, especially on the exterior model. Although the interior and the avionics are pretty good, actually, or very good. Anyway, we'll put that away for now. But yeah, this is just nice all round, and I do like having this cool wing view. It doesn't seem to let me fly the airplane from this view though, which in Flight Simulator 2020 you could. This one doesn't seem to allow it. Thank you again to Tobii for sponsoring this video with their iTracker 5. This is a device that you plug in via USB to your computer and then simply allows you to move your head around in front of your computer to move the camera around. It works with a whole host of games, as you can see here, lots of different simulators and typical games, including Flight Simulator and Flight Simulator 2024. It simply sits on the desk or on your monitor in front of you, and then you can move your head around to move the camera. It can also be used like this to put a bubble on the screen to show where your eyes are looking. Very clever feature. Useful if you're streaming content so you can show where you're looking, or perhaps making videos like tutorials, which is what I use it for. I love using it for taxiing out, especially as you swing your head around to look around the runway, and it's great for visual flying, things like that in the simulator, especially if you're flying VFR low level, or perhaps as you're doing here in the 787 using a HUD, things like that. It's a really, really cool way to interact with the cameras in the simulator. If you want to win one, there's a chance to win using a sweepstakes, so the link is in the description. That runs from the 22nd of January 2025 until the 10th of February 2025 at 1700 CET. But you can also purchase one with a 15% discount using the code in the description, following my link that we have there for you. It works with glasses, it also works even with curved monitors, and it has Windows Hello support, so it can see you and log you into your computer if you have a compatible version of Windows. Thank you again to Tobii for sponsoring this video. Now let's carry on. Now, as we have a moment here in the cruise, some nice details that do work well in this A330. The lighting is done really nicely. The strobe lights look spot on, giving a nice sort of amount of brightness in the daylight. The wing flex is nice as well. You can see here as we look down the side of the wing, that sort of force perspective. It is working correctly, which is not true of all the airplanes in Flight Simulator 2024. As well, all the textures, reflections are all spot on. This is one of the better aeroplanes in the sim, there's no doubt about it. It's just working straight out of the box, which is really nice to see. There are some glitches with this livery, which I installed via the INI manager, but I don't think that's true of all the liveries. Also, which is always fun, it's been true in a lot of flight simulators for a while now, but things you do on the inside do affect the outside, and as you move the camera up here, look at this, the yellow sunshades that we put across the flight deck are showing, which is great. Love that. I love that. And then you can even see the sunshades in the front showing up as well. Really cool. Right, let's jump back inside and get this airplane descending in towards London. It's quite a steep turn, that one. Airbus automatically moderates its bank angle, so you don't have to do anything. We aren't very high, so it can do steeper turns down here. Now it appears I missed the top of descent. Abtom should be at flight level 240. If I go to flight plan, it wanted to be there at 140. So it's time to descend the airplane. Let's put it back into managed speed, and then we'll wind in a lower cruise altitude. You also need to tell it, a lower descent altitude. We're going to descend to flight level 100. Let's imagine that's what air traffic control cleared us for. And there you go, top of descent reached. That's what I was expecting to see. T/D reached. So it won't start its descent even though I've put it in. So we have to do it ourselves. We can either pull, or in this case you can push, and we're going to manage descent. And in this case it will know when it's high on the profile. As you can see here, it thinks it is, so it will try and catch up by allowing the speed to increase. It should also idle the engines. If I go to progress page, I'll see how high it thinks it is. It thinks it's over 10,000 feet high, so we're very high. To help it out, I can use the speed brakes, so let's deploy those. And if we jump inside, might see those deploying. Airbus moderates them very nicely. They're very smooth on the Airbus families. On the Boeing, you have to be a little bit more sensitive about the speed brakes, but there we go. Now, not much speed brake available, but they're quite long. They do cover a large part of the wing, so I'm hoping they will have a bit, or quite a good effect for us to help us descend down. And obviously, the faster you're traveling through the air, the more effective those speed brakes will be. So at 320 plus knots, pretty quick indeed. they're working out nicely. So you can see here we're now 8,200 feet high. Another way to descend would be to pull and go into open descent, but then it's just going to go for the speed you tell it, and you would then need to pull and tell it a faster speed if you want to go at a faster speed. But in this case here, I think the best way is to go manage to manage. Thrust idle des through 20,000 feet, diving down. The blue arrow is where it thinks it will meet the level that we've selected in the window, so flight level 100, and the magenta is where it's going to, that dot is where it's going to decelerate back towards its 250 knots, I believe. That's what it's thinking of doing. Yeah, 250 knots, there you go, at Arnhem. So nice to see these modes. A few bugs. I can see that flight director getting a little bit twitchy like it did on departure where it tried to level us off. So it's not perfect, but it's overall very impressive a set of avionics so far. It is definitely feels like an Airbus. Just a little bit twitchy in the descent there. That actually reminds me, we need to try out the automatics, don't we? Sorry, the normal protections. So just to prove this is an Airbus, I'm going to disconnect the autopilot, which is not assigned to the same key as in my last sim. There we go, autopilot's off. And I'm going to turn off the flight directors just for a moment. And this is not something you'll do in your flight. We can idle the thrust levers, let's pitch the nose up. And let's see how high we can get the nose. It should only go to 30 degrees. I can see the G load is working, so that's down here, so that's a good sign. The Airbus will limit itself to 2.5 Gs, and the pitch should stop at 30, which it has. Great, look at that. So I'm full side stick back now, and it's ignoring it. It's saying no, not letting you go over 30, which as you can see is more than enough up. Let's put the nose down. We need to get it down quite quickly here. We've got the speed very low. Speed down, 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 down. And it should go no lower than 15 degrees nose down. Perfect. Now these are two numbers you'll never reach in normal operations. You should never end up flying yourself at minus 15 or plus 30. So yeah, it's a good limit to have. Look at that wing flex. Works really nicely. Great. Next is the bank. It should only let us go to 66 degrees angle of bank, which equates to level flight if you were to keep the plane at 2.5 G. It's gone slightly through. It should stop at those green equals. So slightly through, but it has brought it back there. If I now let go of the bank, it should return to 33 degrees of bank, not 0. It should go to 33, which it has. It's gone slightly through, but I'll let them off on that. That's only a couple of degrees. And now, whatever bank angle I set, it will just leave it at that. So 20 degrees bank, and now if I pitch up, it doesn't matter. It's going to hold that bank angle. 10 degrees. Yep, holds it nicely. This is really good. Really good. Next step is I'm going to try and stall it. So let's put the nose up, set it about 15 degrees nose up. Thrust levers are at idle. What I'm expecting it to do is as it gets too slow, it should lower the nose for me. I'm now letting go of all the controls as if we've forgotten about it. We're just climbing at idle thrust here. And it should gently drop the nose. Classic Airbus protection this, so that you can't get distracted enough to stall it. And believe me, it has happened in the world. There we go, through VLS, lowest selectable speed. As we get to this amber and black bricks, it will lower the nose is the plan. Now it shouldn't have gone to alpha floor first. It should have lowered the nose. Alpha floor would come in if you were to continue to pull back. Because what happens now is this. If you have alpha floor first, it just keeps driving itself up. It should have lowered the nose for us. However, let's now pull back on the side stick and just check it won't let us go any further back. No, there you go. So you can see it's lowered. It won't even let us get to 30 because it doesn't want us to stall. So it's just sitting on top of the red, the alpha max speed. It should be impossible to stall it like this. And as you can see, it's now, I'm still full back stick and it's holding the nose, and now it's lowering the nose and lowering the nose, making sure that we don't stall. So yeah, good. It does work well. The only thing is that alpha floor came in a little too early. That should come in later in the process. But that's a bit of a detail, I've got to say. You shouldn't be entering that area too much, and it has the protections like you would expect in an Airbus. Let's get it back up to speed, and I'm just going to fly around the turn and rejoin our arrival. In fact, what we could do, try out some more automatic modes as if we were in heading. So let's turn back on the flight directors. Let's put it into heading. auto thrust. Thrust leaders can go to climb. That should engage it in speed mode, which it has. I'm going to descend to flight level 100 in thrust idle open descent. Actually, let's do it in vertical speed and engage the autopilot. So speed, vertical speed 1700, autopilot 1 heading. Looking good, looking good. And the big question is, can we go direct to Arnhem? Let's see if I can make it do that, because this is a good test of the lateral navigation. Direct Arnhem, there it is, round the turn. It's engaged and it's gone into nav mode. I love that the Airbus does it automatically. And now you can see the climb profile is way above us. We've got ourselves a bit low on the profile because we've got so many miles to go still. So I'm actually going to set the vertical speed to 800 feet per minute. But there we go, speed, vertical speed 800, nav, and we're now coming around the turn. And in progress page I can see we're 6,000 feet low. We're very low on the profile. So yeah. Something else I can do is just push that, and we're going to manage, and it should just do about 1,000 feet per minute until it senses that it's getting close to the profile. Seems to be going for idle. Not sure it would do that. Might have confused it by being so far off the profile. But yeah, so that's looking good. So the lateral descent modes and the Airbus protection modes all feel nice. Okay, I think I found a way to get the Gatwick charts to work a bit earlier. I went to flight plan up here on the top left, and then I pressed I next to Gatwick, and then it seemed to bring up the charts there. So let's just test that theory. If I go EHAM, it brings the charts there. So go to your flight plan and then scroll to destination I, and then you get the charts a bit earlier. Good. So we are going to fly the arrival, and we're coming in via Tebra. We can see hopefully in just a second here, just leveling off at 10,000 feet, so we're below the profile still. And great feature this, I love that it has the LEDO charts and it just shows them all the way through. We could enter a hold, we're not going to do that today. Holding does work, I believe, in this airplane. All you need to do is flight plan, pick the waypoint, so Arnhem is coming up, enter a hold, 214 right turns, and then you can see it there. In fact, let's do it, let's insert the hold. Just to prove it works. This is quite an advanced lateral feature that not all airplanes have out the box, so there we go. Of course all airliners do these days, but yeah, there we go. Looks good, and that will actually help me just talk about a couple of other things. Then we have the rest of the route via timber, which you can see here, timber. And then you'll remember earlier I put in the transition, so we're going to land on 26 left, approach, 26 left. There it is, that's just the ILS, so that's already in. And what we also need is the initial approach for 26 left here, which takes us from timber, and that's why I did that timber transition, you'll remember. Speed limit exceeded, that's fine. And there you go, timber round through, and then they'll join the ILS. So, crucially, my green string, if I go to plan and zoom in, runs all the way through to the ILS. Now, something's going on here, I'm not sure quite why. The intercept is actually through, so it should go Mayfield 8.5, and then a left turn and in. What's happening is it's too fast. It's trying to do that May 8.5 at 250 knots. Obviously it can't do that because it's an intercept, so I might draw my own speed limit in there. Let's put in 180 knots slash. So it's the first part, and I'll put that in at May 8.5. Now, is it happy with that? It looks like it is. It's complaining about the speed at the hold, that's fine. It still doesn't redraw it. We'll see what happens, but yeah, so there's a slight glitch there, but I'm confident in the coding. What we can always do is put it into heading to intercept the ILS. So, there we go. Good stuff. Right, if I go back to ARC, should see that we're flying the hold nicely, which we are. Look at that. Great. I'm actually going to do immediate exit of the hold, and now it should fly one hold and then carry on the arrival, and we can carry on into Gatwick. Something else we'll do at 10,000 feet. Oh, you can see in managed speed as well, it's correctly brought the speed back to green dot, which is what it should do. This is our most efficient lift drag speed, so that's great. I'm going to press the LS button on both sides, and that brings up the scales for the ILS, and we can see here 110.9. Now we can check the ILS chart, can't we? Because we can go to our Gatwick, 26 left, ILS, and the frequency is 110.9, so that's great. We'll also turn on the seatbelt sign, turn on the landing lights, turn on the seatbelt signs for the passengers. Yeah, and pretty good. Next, descent restrictions you can see here are all in, and if I go to the arrival again, Zebra, we can actually see if there's any altitude constraints we need to apply. 250 knots and then max 220 knots at Timber, flight level 70. So still on the flight level. Let's put in 70, which is our flight level at Timber, our next restriction. And again, the best way to deal with it is to just push forward and let it do it in managed descent, because the aeroplane has calculated that arrival. The VNAV is very good. I'm confident in the VNAV in this airplane, which is great. Great news. Now, if you don't want to fly the full hold, you can also do another direct, and we can just direct ourselves to one of these other waypoints like KKE63. But it would take us on a left turn, as you can see, so I won't actually do that right now. So we'll erase that. Yeah, very good. It's a robust lateral navigation. It's making sense to me, and it's working as I hope. Let's have a look through the systems pages, see how they're doing. So engines, yep, engine secondary display, fine. We've used over 5 tons, quite a lot actually, but there we go. It's a big airplane. Bleed page working nicely. If you bring the thrust to idle, you'd expect the high pressure valves to open. That's intermediate pressure and high pressure, IP and HP. This is providing the air for the cabin to pressurize. So if the engine thrust is too low, you'd need to take it from a higher pressure stage in the compressor of the engine. So out of curiosity, let's do that. Let's idle the engines. Pretty low down. It might not need it at this height. No, there they are. The high pressure valves have opened. This is good stuff. Can't deny it. This is great stuff. Put the auto thrust back on. Yeah, getting a little slow there. Not disastrously, but it's a little slow. Next we have pressurization, looking good. You've got those outflow valves modulating, cabins descending gradually 10 feet per minute, makes sense. AC electrics, DC electrics, hydraulics, all working. And you can actually see the APU is off. Lots of zones of temperature control. That's loads. It's quite a long airplane, I suppose. Door. So yeah, what this is showing is the commanded temperature, and then the air, the temperature in the cabin, and then the air being put into it to keep it at that temperature. So it's pumping in quite warm air in the cabin to keep it at 23 degrees. Obviously thinks it's a bit cold back there. Doors, wheels, flight controls, and fuel. Yeah, all good. Even got the fuel temperatures. It's nice. This is a nice nice suite of working systems here. I like it. Right, landing lights, seatbelts on. Good. So it's correctly left the hold now at Arnhem. It's just done that on its own, which is great. No heading bug to update, which is also fantastic. And now it's just going to fly down this arrival. And yeah, I think the next step really to talk to you about is going to be when we set QNH and head on to the ILS, which is going to be here. Again, it has done this funny drawing, but yeah, so that's a little bit of a bug. Basically, that should be a straight line. It's like a 90-degree turn and then onto the ILS. Now, the ILS intercept altitude is 2,000 feet. You can see it here. But the next restriction we have is actually at Timber at 4,000 feet. What I'm going to do is ignore my speed here. I'm just speeding things up while I'm making the video. I'm going to set the 2,000 feet in the window. I'm then going to go into Manage Descent, and I'm going to set QNH of 1013 because that's an altitude restriction. And you'll see here, although I put 2,000 feet here, it's actually going to level off at 4,000 feet. That speed is actually too high, which in the airplane is correctly not flown through the red bar, so that's good. We'll just pretend we've been told to speed up by air traffic control. So what it's done is it's going to say, well, I know you want 2,000 feet, but you're actually going to reach 2,000 feet too early. So I'm going to level off at 4,000 feet initially, and it's doing it here. You can see the magenta arrow there. So it thinks it will hit 4,000 feet just before May, which is also a 4,000 feet restriction. And then after that, I can carry on down to 2,000. So if I leave it in DES mode now, it will do it all automatically. So again, good stuff. This is quite advanced Airbusing, and it's doing it well. It's got a speed error because I am going much too fast, but I'm doing that on purpose because I am just accelerating myself through the arrival a little bit. And air traffic control could tell you it's unlikely they'd say 300 knots here, but they could say I want you to maintain 250 or something, or maybe 270. It does happen. It's not impossible. You don't want to go 300 knots too low down because you've got more risk of drones and birds, and they'll obviously come straight through a windscreen if you're going too fast. Into clouds, total air temperature. Well, it's too warm, it's plus 18, so we don't need the engine anti-ice. Another advantage of flying fast. Remember, TAT is your total air temperature. The reason it's so warm is because the air compresses on the front of the aeroplane. So the faster you're going, the bigger the difference. SAT, static air temperature, is the actual temperature outside. So that's the temperature you would feel if you were standing outside. So it's 4 degrees out there, but because we're going so fast, the leading edge of the aeroplane is actually sitting at 18 degrees, plus 18, which is too warm for ice. So not a problem. So yeah, it's going to level off at 4, then after May, I'd expect it to descend down to 2,000 feet. Great. Now let's see if there's any more checklists it would like us to do. Descent, so this is telling you how. So a lot of these, some of these are procedures and some of them are checklists. You sort of have to work out which one. So approach, briefing confirmed, ECAM status, so you'd press the status and check. If there's no STS message though, you know that you don't have anything there. So that's fine. Seatbelts are on, barrier ref on QNH of 1013. Minimums we've set 400. Engine start select, we can leave it in norm. As I say, rare to set it to ignition start. The times you would do that is if you're in turbulence, heavy rain, things like that. And you don't have the flaps out, because when the flaps come out it should run anyway. Good. Then it tells you how to do the initial approach, which you've already done. So next is the landing checklist basically. It's doing a good job, especially with this high speed that I'm forcing it to do, which it probably didn't want to do. So there's going to be time to start getting the energy back out of the airplane soon. So there's out, it's leveled off. That's wrong, shouldn't have done that, should have done it at 4,000. So I'm going to pressure it again to keep it descending. Yeah, this is a recurring bug it seems. So let's go back to manage speed. Thrust des. Now I've thrown it up a bit of a curveball here, because what it's expecting me to do was be flying slower. So let's put the speed brakes out and let's get it to decelerate now, and that will help it out. Like I say, it's going to level off at 4 anyway, but what I'm looking for is once we go past May, I want to see that 4 disappear and it should change to the 2 which we have in the window. There we go, 2,000, great. Now it thinks it will make 2,000 just before May 8.5, which is where we want to be, and 180 knots. So that's all looking good. Now this is an Airbus, so we need to activate the approach phase. It will do it automatically, but it's going to do it far too late over here, and with this funny squiggle, not great. So yeah, this bug is messing us up a bit here. So it's not a bad idea now to go to perf, activate approach phase, confirm. This, what it now does, all that does is it targets the minimum speed in your current configuration. So now the target speed, you can't see it, but it's green dot. It's this speed here, which is great. I'm going to get rid of the speed brakes now. I think the speed's under control. But yeah, clearly it's going to fly all of this wrong. So I'm going to have to intercept the ILS myself. Once you get below those amber dashes, you can put out your next stage of flap. So 240 knots is the speed limit for flap 1. So let's put out flap 1. Look at us whizzing along over the ground there. Awesome. See here the DME 11.6 miles from the runway, which it makes sense. It's just over there. So like I say, we should make a left turn from May and intercept the ILS. Doesn't look like it's going to work out for us here. So this is an interesting little bug where it's just drawn off over into the distance. May intercept, and then yeah, a bit of a shame that it was doing so well. Radio altimeter comes alive at 2,500 feet. That makes sense. So it shows you have the right QNH, because they should match pretty closely. The ground beneath us is about sea level. So this is the height over the ground beneath us. This is the height above sea level. There's 200 knots. Looking good. Should be 180. So a bit of speed brake now, just to slow us down a bit more. Long haul aircraft, you do tend to use the speed brakes a bit more. They're just sort of freight trains as they come in, and they need a bit of help slowing down. It's not uncommon. They've got so much momentum. Out. Right, it's not going to do it, so I'm going to have to do the intercept myself. So I'm just going to put the heading to the left. It's runway 26, which means a 30-degree intercept would be 290 degrees. Heading. Speed brakes away. And now we're on intercept heading. I can arm the approach. For my own benefit, I'm just going to see if I do direct 6.5 and then do the intercept, it should draw a straight line. No, and it's going into nav, so I need to rearm the approach, which I'll do there. Lock glide slope. So what I did wrong there was I did it the opposite way. So let's do 6.5, 077. Ah, I see. It's got India Whiskey Whiskey drawn out there. So let's do direct 5.5. There we go. Now that's a better line. So that's what happened. One of the waypoints was in the wrong place. So now I can see why. Interesting. Right. So it's going to nav. That's not good. Let's rearm approach. Nav and lock is armed. And hopefully it'll go lock star. There we go. So all you need to do was arm the approach there. I just made that difficult just by trying to draw out that line, just to figure out why the flight plan was so wrong. And you'll see here that even though the target speed is back this slow, it's sitting at S, which is correct. So this is all looking good. Remember, we're quite low to the ground here, so just before the glide slope intercepts, before our diamond drops down to meet us, I'm going to lower the wheels. Otherwise we'll be getting a bit late. But before we do that, let's put flaps 2 out. Flaps 2, now we'll see them travel. Look at that, nice animation. Now you get some extra lift off the wing and some extra drag as well. Look at the ailerons droop as well. Love it. Nice. This is all good animation. Look at that. Perfectly. There's a glide slope. Gear down. And arm those ground spoilers for touchdown. That way they'll deploy when we land. There's the wheels. Hear those engines spooling up. A lot of drag. You can see that all those holes in the bottom of the airplane with these doors open creates a huge amount of drag while the gear travels. So once they're locked in place, lock and lock, then the gear doors could close, and then the airplane's a little more streamlined than it was. And that's the reason if you have a wind shear or you're about to hit the ground and you get a warning saying pull up, you don't raise the gear. You'd think you want to get rid of it because it creates drag, but if you raise the gear, there's even more drag whilst it travels, so we don't like to do that. Let's go flap 3. That's quite a lot of flap actually. On a 320, the difference between 2 and 3 is pretty minimal. And you can see it slowing down to the flap 3 speed. And finally, we'll go flap full. There it goes. And it comes back to the target approach speed. Great. Landing memo will come up here shortly. And what we can do is go back to our charts very briefly and just check our going altitude, which is 3,000 feet. So 3,000 in the window in case we go around. Landing memo will appear here. We're in speed mode for the auto thrust, and the cabin will hopefully wake up. Now what happened there was in all of that, I managed to capture out. Look at that. So that has not worked. So we are effectively almost in a go around here. So let's fly the go around properly, because that just hasn't worked. With 2 pilots, that would have been a bit more obvious, but at least it's done the safer thing and leveled us off high. So we're going to go around to the altitude above us. So I'll say go around, flaps, so all the way forwards, move the flaps in a stage, flaps 3, positive climb, gear up, and he goes man toga, open climb nav, and now we're already above acceleration altitude, so we can bring the thrust levers back to climb, speed out star. We're accelerating from F, so let's go flaps 1. We're above the S. Can we fly clean at 200 knots? I'm not sure, so I'm going to leave it where it is. There we go. So that's going to burn some of our extra fuel there that we had. Lucky we had it. So this outbug is causing a few issues today. But what it has done is that blue line, which was the go-around path, has now gone green. So it's correctly done it. The reason it's done that is because I put the thrust levers all the way through to toga. So by doing that, it has allowed it to sequence correctly. So all we did there was thrust levers to toga, move the flaps up 1 stage, and once you've got positive climb, raise the landing gear. Now it's flying the go-around track. So what we need to do is set up for another approach. So I'm just going to vector myself as if I'm air traffic control. Put the heading in there, and we'll come around and do that again. It's a common question, what needs to be done once you've gone around? Well, we've leveled off at 3,000. Let's imagine air traffic control is now vectoring us for the second approach. So things that need to be done. Well, the approach is exactly the same. So in the Airbus, it's really straightforward. All I could need to do is activate the approach phase again. So I activate it, and it's going to come back to the S speed, which is surprisingly low. But there you go. That's what it's going to do. In here, we have all the same information. It's saved it across, so that's a great feature of the Airbus. I need to check I have enough fuel to stay here. Do we want to try again, or do we need to divert? Why did we go around? That sort of thing. We've got 5.3 tons, so we're actually pretty light on fuel, because remember, we wanted to land with 5.2. So we're going to eat into our alternate fuel. Now we can do that. We can say, well, why not? I know what's going on here at Gatwick. I just made an approach here. It was a go around because our autopilot messed up and we didn't pick it up quick enough. So it's our fault. The runway's still available. The conditions are still nice and the weather's still nice. So why would we go and divert to another airfield and arrive with even less fuel, somewhere we haven't prepared for? It doesn't make sense. So this is a situation where we would consider staying here despite the fact that we are going to now burn our alternate fuel. But that's totally acceptable. So I'm just going to take us on a nice short circuit. Would imagine air traffic control being very nice to us. Heading 080. We'll descend back down to 2,000 feet. We are visual with the ground. 500 feet per minute. This is the sort of thing that happens to me on streams normally. And then a nice gentle descent will make this very efficient, and that will help us out. You would also rerun your approach checklist and your approach checklist, but we're on the Q&H. You'd do a PA to the passengers, maybe speak to the camera crew if you felt the need to. They tend to know what's going on. Currently, things will land with 3.1 tons, which is pretty low, still above final reserve fuel. We must land with final reserve fuel. That's the critical thing here. If we don't, we'd have to declare a mayday to air traffic control, because it's, of course, very, very serious indeed to land without that final half an hour of fuel. So 2,000 feet, and we'll just go slightly outside the 6.5 and do another intercept there. And I'll just see if I can make sure that out doesn't happen again. Now this is not uncommon to what air traffic would do. They're pretty good at busy airports. The last thing they want is for you to have a fuel emergency and create more issues for them. So we're at a nice low speed. We got the energy under control. We've already got flap one out when we're at 2,000 feet, so we can intercept via 5.5 miles is the latest really we want to intercept by. So let's just take ourselves slightly wider actually. We'll do heading 030 degrees. And what I'm going to do down here, we know the fuel on board is below minimum, but that's because it's redrawn the whole arrival again. We're not flying all of that. But what I can do is draw out, it's got all the way out from timber, from the 5.5, and we'll do the 077, and you can see that now has drawn a nice extended center line. So I'm going to click that, and then I'm going to pull the heading again because it automatically tries to intercept it. And there we go, speed out and heading. And now we have a nice clear picture of our arrival. Let's bring us on to heading 350. Currently only 9 miles out from the airport, so if we're tight in, you do have to be careful on these go-arounds not to get rushed in again. Where's the airport gone? There it is. Runway over there. And finally, left onto intercept heading 290. Once we're pointing the right way, arm the approach, and the second autopilot. There we go. Taxi dual AP 1+2, lock star. Let's capture the localizer. And then we come from 9 miles. Looking good. Fuel is actually not too bad, 4.9. Remember, our final reserve fuel is 2.2, so we've actually got 2 tons spare. 2 tons is a lot of fuel. It's half an hour, so we've got plenty of fuel. It's just the alternate fuel was so high, so we've got lots of fuel to burn here. We could do another circuit and still not hit our final reserve, so it's not as uncomfortable as it sounds. And what can happen is, as a pilot, you need to sort of read through these numbers. This amber down here can be very scary. Oh, we haven't got enough fuel to land, and then you might make a bad approach or do something else wrong. It's important that you can contextualize what's actually going on. Yes, okay, but we're still landing with 4 tons of fuel. That's loads, so we're in a good position here. Hard to do, but that's a key part of the job, really. Right, here we go then. Coming up with the glide slope. It's on the localizer. Glide slope is armed. I'm going to check carefully about those vertical modes. Let's lower the gear again. Nicely animated, by the way. Like lots of things on this airplane. They've done a good job with it. go flaps 2. Glide slope and lock. Let's put 3,000 in the window. Just get that altitude window out of the way now. We'll go flap 3. Bit of speed brake going to be needed here, I think. Which on the 320 isn't always possible, depending which variant you're flying. It looks like the 330 speed brakes are still working even at flap 3, so that's good. It's gone into out again. Seems to be something to do with changing view. So I don't know whether this is my setup specifically. So I'm going to have to be a little bit creative here. We're effectively doing glide slope from above, so altitude out of the way. We're in VS, glide slope is armed. There we go, glide slope. Flap full. Yeah, I take it all back. That is because my joystick, because of the way they've set up Flight Simulator 2024, had a second command, so I should have seen that. That's my fault. So anyway, landing. So the out bug is not a bug. It's to do with me changing view outside. Right. Glide slope, lock, we're all in the right modes, we've got the gear down, we are configured, and the aircraft is in good shape. So that's one bug that doesn't count. Yeah. Great. This is a well-rounded aeroplane, it seems. Still waiting for the cabin. Do a ding, see if that helps. In reality, you might be able to check that manually. There we go, cabin ready. Good. Right, let's give it a go at landing. I'm going to treat it like a 320. I don't know if that's the correct thing to do, but we're going to flare at 30, idle the thrust levers shortly after that. Airbus does keep things pretty standard, so... There we go, get the head tracking on. And lands. A little bit low. Gentle correction. Bit of a lump in the glide slope there. Yeah, it's going to cross us over that threshold pretty high.
200 minimum.
I'm just going to keep flying with the pappies now. That glide slope's going all over the place.
100.
Runway painting isn't quite aligned either.
50, 40, 30,
Flare,
20,
idle.
10.
There's touchdown. Get the reversers out. Gently let it settle down. And we're down. The reversers aren't quite working for me. That's a bug with... I can't get the reverse axes to work, but there we go. Auto brake low. Clearly enough. And we're coming to a stop. Excellent. Welcome to Gatwick. Reversers to idle. Take out the auto brake. Yeah, look at that. All working exactly as you'd want it to. Shame about the runway markings being so misaligned here. Let's bring it to a stop. So that's all for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope it's been interesting for you. Overall, what are the impressions on the Anybuilds A330, the default aircraft of Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024? Well, I think it's rather fantastic. It's a complete package. It doesn't have many bugs, if any, as I discovered that the one I thought there was actually down to my controls. The graphics are excellent all throughout, so the exterior and the interior. The performance is good, it runs smoothly, and the handling feels great. It has the Airbus style, and it does apply it correctly, which is really nice. The automatics are more than capable of flying around on VATSIM, including holds and flying your ILS really quite nicely there. Again, as long as you make sure your control bindings are correct. So yeah, it's really quite lovely. It's one of the better aircraft, I think, in Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024. I think you'll have a good time with it. I hope this video will give you a bit of a clue as to how to operate it and to get it going and to be able to enjoy it. But like I say, very transferable from the A320. So yeah, lovely to look at, lovely to fly. There's really no complaints from me about the Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024 A330. Thank you so much for watching. We're going to fly more of these airliners in Microsoft Flight Simulator. We'll have more videos and guides, as well as live streams and tutorials on the channel, so do please subscribe if you'd like to see those. Thank you so much for watching. Bye-bye.